Hi, my name is Adrian Nester, and I'm here from Southern Virginia. I'm an AP Lit teacher, an AP Lit reader, and I have a few things to tell you about Q2 from last year. It became known as the Zenobia prompt. This is from Blythedale Romance, a Nathaniel Hawthorne piece. So I have a couple of tips that hopefully you can read here, and I'm going to go through a few things with you. So first of all, for teachers, if you've not taught this passage yet, one of the things that I resolved to do after reading hundreds of essays last year on this prompt was that I would let my students struggle with it. Too many times I'm eager to lead them in the right direction or give them tips or hints as we read and discuss a passage, and this year with Zenobia I decided I wouldn't do that. So with this video on aplithelp.com there will be a document called Struggling with Zenobia, which is just sort of how I worked through allowing my students, giving them scaffolding early on to be able to go through this prompt. So if you've taught it maybe earlier, you could do this again, or if you haven't taught this prompt yet and you are saving it, then this might be a good activity to start with. I would also really encourage you to use the Chief Reader Reports. I've heard that the Chief Reader Reports are very underused on the College Board site. They've changed the layout of them, so they're a little more user-friendly. They'll look something like this. It tells you about the question. It even gives you the mean score. Students did struggle with this. The score was below 4. It was 3.94, which was about the same, I think, as the pickle prompt the year before. But they had a little bit of a hard time. They found something to say about it, but as far as being able to score higher, it was more difficult. So within this report, they also give you in these blocks and this layout on the second and third pages issues that students had, and then examples of ways that students did well with these particular issues. So it's really, really helpful. And a lot of the things that we observed in the reading are also being reflected here, which I think is great. And then even they offer some sentence starters and opportunities for students to be able to work through this passage on this third page. So if you've not taught this passage, or if you want to refresh on it and teach it again, I highly recommend looking at the copy of Struggling with Zenobia and also the Chief Reader Report to get started. Now once you're ready to actually look at the prompt itself, I have a few things that I'd like to talk about regarding that. So first of all, this prompt really gives us 3 things before you even get to the passage. Gives you quite a bit of background, although we don't even know the name of the novel, we don't know the name of the narrator. You do get quite a bit of information in the background, about 2.5 lines, telling the reader about what to expect between the narrator and Zenobia. And we know that they've been living in this communal rural living situation, and they're about to part ways. So just pause for a second, allow yourself to consider what kind of complexity is that going to bring, and then you'll set yourself up for knowing that emotions are going to run high when there's a parting of ways, and now it's your job to discover that. The next sentence tells you to read the passage carefully, of course, and then the final sentence tells you really the main job that you have in this passage. And the main job that you have with this passage is to annotate specifically for how Hawthorne portrays the narrator's attitude towards Zenobia. That needs to be the star of your paper. That needs to be, when you're reading through this the first time, you should solely be looking for how is the narrator's attitude portrayed towards Zenobia. And then you're able to find the literary techniques. So in the Chief Reader Report, this was one of the things that came up. The literary techniques should not be the star of the show. They should be the support for this bigger question that's being asked. What is the narrator's attitude? And so this prompt actually doesn't give you any literary techniques that you have to use, which is really great because it gives you an opportunity to go in whatever direction you want to. Sometimes the prompt will give you 2 or maybe even 3 literary techniques to consider. This prompt didn't do that. And so we saw students go in a lot of different directions, but the star of the papers that I read, the one that kept coming up over and over again, was diction. And it wasn't always used so well. A lot of times diction was used to describe something in the passage, but it was used oftentimes without an adjective in front of it, and in fact if you say that you're really just saying words. And so we want to describe that, and then even when someone would put a word in front of this, it would be like sometimes a really strange word that didn't really fit. So maybe consider, what do you really mean when you're saying diction? Do you really mean selection of detail? Do you mean descriptive language? Do you really mean verb choice maybe? And so go even more specifically into diction. Maybe don't even use the word diction at all. You can talk to your teacher about her preference or his preference on that. But be specific and really get into the why, because the why is what matters. So how is that diction, that word choice, and the type of diction that you've chosen, or maybe the selection of detail, how is that supporting the narrator's attitude towards Zenobia? All right, next one. Short quotes. The readers have read and read and read and read this passage, have probably even memorized large chunks of it before your essay appears in front of them. So we do not need you to recount for us sentence after sentence after sentence of support. A few words nicely integrated into your own sentences, and you need to practice in order to do this. I read somewhere that 9 words is a good limit to put yourself at. So if you need a hard and fast rule, give yourself a 9-word limit. And otherwise, you need to paraphrase and integrate that into it. And this should be as support for, again, the narrator's attitude towards Zenobia, which is complex, okay? If you haven't found the complexity, you need to find that. In the score reports for this, so there are essays available on the College Board website, of course. There are 3 available. There's a 7 and there's a 5, and I believe the third is a 3. The 7 is the one that says, the author of this essay was able to find the complexity and how it shifts and his own vacillation between how he feels about Zenobia. So if you're writing a Q1 for that matter, or a Q2, and you've not found the complexity, you're probably missing something. So go back, find that complexity, look for a shift in what is expected, or maybe how it started and how it ends. We had a lot of conclusions that just restate what's already been said. That doesn't hurt you at all. It just doesn't advance your score. So try to maybe write a really nice paragraph that concludes, also dealing with the concluding paragraph of the text itself. This was 1 page excerpted from an entire novel. So why did they choose to stop it here? There must be something significant here that's going to help us wrap up and understand more about either the narrator's attitude about Zenobia, or really advanced essays were able to not only talk about his attitude towards Zenobia, but how he revealed things about himself. And so they really went a step further past even what the prompt was asking, which was really nice. A great exercise to do, since there is a 5, is to take a 5 to a higher score. So if you provide students with a copy of the 5 that's available on College Board, and then have them work through that, and students can be really harsh graders if you have not experienced that in your own classrooms yet. But if you'll have them try to take the 5 and try to take that to a higher number, that might be a good exercise to do as we prepare for the countdown here before the test in May. Listen to your teachers, do your best. Please know that the readers are reading each paper very carefully, and that we are constantly encouraged to reward you for what you do well. And that's exactly what we're doing at the reading. Look forward to reading your papers in Salt Lake.